Well, welcome to another edition of Slingin Dirt. We're going to forego the points breakdown, and instead we're just going to have a complete 360 versus 305 conversation / argument / wrestling match at Eagle Raceway.
This is as real as it's going to get right here, folks. I want to introduce everybody on the phone.
Before we get to all that, let's thank our beautiful sponsors, Lost Dog Design. Get to Raina and Dave. They're going to take care of all of your not only website design, but Facebook, Twitter, and social media handles. Get to them today, lostdogdesign.com. Give them a call. Let them do all of your promoting for you. And social networking, I think we've all noticed, this is kind of a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
I want to know why I'm in the middle of the sausage fest right now. I'm the smallest guy here. I should not be separating anybody.
He said it. He's the smallest.
I've got a table and almost a wall between everybody, so I feel pretty safe. Buddy, introduce everybody, because I'm still kind of new to the dirt track world, so I don't know everybody's names.
Okay, on the phone we have French Grimes and Charlie Smiley Sutton. They're out of Texas. French is actually out of the East Coast, and I believe he flew down to Texas. He had a meeting with Smiley this week.
I drove 1,200 miles to Texas here.
Whoa.
Okay, so he drove 1,200 miles to Texas. And so with that being said, they're on the phone.
From Virginia, where we have serious-ass hillbillies.
Serious-ass hillbillies.
Can you maybe...
I imported one in case we didn't have enough down here.
Okay, and then in studio, we have Jay Eckley of Eckley Race Engines. We have Adam Gullion, a Hot Shoe 360 sprint car driver. Andrew Kaziski, everybody knows who he is. The current promoter and owner of Eagle Raceway, Roger Hayden. And then, of course, Dan and myself. Here's what we're going to be doing today. One of the biggest news stories in dirt racing, which we're trying to bring you here on Slingin Dirt, is the RaceSaver engine package coming into Eagle Raceway in 2013. A lot of pros, a lot of cons, some people for, some people against. And with that being said, we wanted to get everybody on board. This is going to be the last time we do this, but we just want to lay it all out there on the line, so hopefully everybody can come away learning a little bit of something, because I know I, for one, don't know a whole lot about sprint cars other than they're really, really fast. So... let me.
After we first talked about this a couple of weeks ago on Slingin Dirt, Adam, you emailed us and said there's a couple of things that we were misrepresented. So let's just get into it.
Yep.
And Adam, talk about that email and some things you feel have not been addressed properly.
All right, guys. Well, the first thing I wanted to address was, the current price quotes that everybody's throwing out there. You can put a roller together for $3 or $4 grand, and then put a motor together.
Talk up a little bit now so I can hear you.
You're never happy, are you? Good Lord. All right.
Need volume.
The first thing I wanted to address was the price quotes that I was seeing everybody and hearing everybody talk about, that you can put a motor together for $3 or $4 grand and a roller for $3 to $4 grand. And, I'm sure you can, but it ain't going to be anything that I want to race against. And, you buy a used rear end for $1,000. Buy a used frame and body for $2,000, where there's $3 grand. So
you want me to give you the breakdown, or do you want to talk about it? What do you want to do?
No, we can talk about it. That's just what and the other $1,000 that you got left, you got to buy a top wing, a front wing, wheels and tires, torsion bars, shocks.
A roller, depending on where you're going to get it, that might be a little low. The engine at $3 grand, if you have absolutely nothing, you ain't going to make it at $3 grand with absolutely nothing.
No, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what was thrown out.
You're going to make it at $8 grand with nothing.
You can build a competitive engine with a stock crank and stock rods and cast pistons. That's pretty cheap. The bottom, what I would consider a pretty good, inexpensive motor would be to take a stock crank.
Go ahead, I got it.
Don't do anything to it. Get a set of $200 rods from whomever you like. It can be Eagle, it can be Lenati, whatever. Everybody's got about a $200 set of rods with a floating pin. Get a set of pistons like KB143s. It's a cast hyper-eutectic piston. The pistons are $250. The rods are $200. If you've got a used 305, you got 100, 150 in that. So, by my count, we're not much over 500 there, are we?
Sounds like a piece of shit.
Well,
I understand on the tracks that in Texas and.
Who's speaking now?
This is Jay from Eckley Racing Engines.
All right. Are you the engine builder?
Yes, sir.
All right? It is a piece of shit, since you put it that way, but it's a piece of shit that is competitive. So let me tell you a story. You can believe it or don't believe it. It makes no never mind to me. A guy brought me an engine back. I do not build engines for RaceSaver because it is conflict of interest. I, however, do it serious engine development at a high level. Maybe know what I'm doing, maybe not. He brought back an engine he wanted to trade in for some parts, and he wanted $1,000 for it. When I saw what serial number was, I gave him $2,000 because it's a museum piece. It is RaceSaver serial number 4. I built that motor in 1998. In 1998, it was built with what was at that time called a Lunati kit. They had a block they bored to 40 thousandths. They had a cast Chinese crank in it. They had Lunati street race rods in it and KB 143 pistons. It was assembled with that, with RaceSaver heads in 1998. In around 2001, a neighbor needed to borrow a motor, so he took that motor from me and left me some parts. He raced it that year, and at some point he hydraulic this, because I'm telling you this because you're an engine builder and you won't like this, but it's the way it happened. He hydraulic it, bent a rod, and broke a cylinder. And he wanted to race that weekend. He had a little machine shop. So I went down and helped him. We pulled one head off 2 pistons, the one that was hurt and the one next to it. We took the broke rod, welded a bolt to it to tie the boring bar down, 777 bar. We bored the cylinder with the other 6 pistons in, the head and everything on it, pushed the sleeve in it, bored the sleeve, honed the sleeve, blew all the chips out the motor, put a new piston and rod in that hole, bolted it back. It's the last time it was apart. It raced every year since. As near as we can tell, it's over 4,000 laps. One head has never been off. The other head was off only to fix the collapsed cylinder. When he brought it back to me, he had the bottom plate of the injector on. He took all the rest of his stuff off. Just for meanness, I bolted throttle bodies on it to the bottom of the base plate, put a mag in it, put it on the dyno, and pulled it. It made 458 horsepower on my dyno. That is competitive horsepower. It's run 4,000 laps or better. It has never been apart, and it is a motor that is absolutely, as you described it, shit.
On what size of a track?
Pardon me?
On what size of a track did it race 4,000 laps on?
Our tracks vary from 3/8. The biggest we run on is a 5/8. The engine was run appropriately in that the boys that had it listened to me on gear. Most of the time, it was never turned over 6,900. And that's only one of many. I have many engines that I have helped people do that had no money. The only other story I'll tell you that is, I have all the parts, I can substantiate it. That motor, by the way, it's got cracks in the side of the block from freezing. It's going to go in as a museum piece for what it is, because I can document every year of that engine's life. If nobody believes me, they can come and go toe-to-toe with me, and I can prove it. I have no interest in telling you anything that I can't prove. I got better things to do. Now, the other end, some guy hurt a motor, and he was mean to it, and he needed help, but he didn't deserve help. I took a stock 305, took it apart, pressure washed it, has 17 thousandths ring wear, bolted it back with the original Chevy dish pistons, new rings and bearings, knowing that it would break a ring eventually, hitting the ridge. Put a set of heads on it, a 2 1/16 injector. It only made 419 horsepower. It raced all year. At the end of the year, it was taken down. It had broken about 3 rings. But it won 3 races, and some of those races that it won were on fairly substantial halves. The driver was a good driver. But those are 2 instances where you can take a junk motor and be competitive. Do I suggest that people build a junk motor? You got wind in that phone, Smiley. Do I suggest they build a junk motor? No, I don't suggest they build a junk motor. But if you have no money, then you can build a junk motor and be competitive. I can't tell you how many 100 motors that are built with stock cranks, $200 rods, and cast pistons that have lived at least 5 years without any trouble. I have my good motors that have good parts in them. I know how much power difference there is between the good and the bad. The reason you buy good parts is to have a motor that is more reliable as to whether it would give you problems or not. It's a confidence filter. But when you have motors, I know for a fact that in at least probably 50 instances that I can name, stock cranks, as bad as they are, have lasted at least 5 years.
What's the
stock
most
rods are not something I'd want to do, but if you're not going to spend anything for rods, don't even change the bolts. Put them in with pressed piston pins. Not what I would recommend, but it can be done. Now, as far as a good engine, by all means, I would like to have a decent crank in it, something steel, not light particularly. You probably, at today's prices, you can get a pretty good set of rods. Not great, but you can get a pretty good set for probably, $7.5? And a number of people right now are making decent forged pistons for the RaceSaver motors. One is Molly, one is Icon forged racing pistons. JE has a inexpensive piston. A lot of forged pistons are available for $500.
What's the price tag on what you would consider a good motor?
Speak up a little bit, please.
What's the price tag that you've got on what you would consider to be a good motor?
Say it a little. What is the price tag on what?
On what you would consider to be a good engine.
I think you can build a pretty damn decent. If you buy everything brand new, the injector is going to be about $2,600 for the injector. That's the most expensive part. I think a decent engine, pretty damn decent, can be everything brand new, nothing used. I think you can build a decent engine for around $7,500 to $8,000 with fairly nice parts. That should be a 10-year piece.
And that's with you.
We're on the phone right now with Smiley Sutton down there in the wonderful state of Texas. Right now, Jay, let's hear your side of the story. Roger, let's have you get in here a little bit, or Mr. Adam Golian, let's have one of you three get in here and give your side of the story. We've heard French and Smiley quite a bit. Get in here if you guys can.
On the 305 deal, I'm not against what you guys are doing. It's just the price tags that are floating around is for guys that are just they're rounding up their own parts, taking them to a machine shop and having the work done, and putting them together in their garage. It's not paying somebody like me to do the R&D on them and to dyno them and do all the machine work and stuff on.
Who's talking right now? This is French asking.
This is Jay.
I'm sorry?
This is Jay Eckley.
Yeah. And you're saying that a guy, did I understand that a guy can have a few used parts he can do right much better than that?
No, I'm saying that the prices that you're saying, that you're quoting is not having a professional engine shop like me or ASI or Westmar.
No, that's the parts to build it. It's not a professional engine
shop. That's right, and that's the numbers that keep floating around.
Do you think a reasonable, I mean, I can't tell you what your rates are, but usually assembling a motor, you'd have to bore it. How much money do you think you'd have in building the motor?
I just got done doing one for a guy in Oklahoma. It had $20,000 in it.
And what was parts and what was labor at $20,000?
I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but we had, I can tell you we used CompStar cranking rods, used a stock block, put 4-bolt caps on it.
Could you talk just a little louder, please?
We used a stock block. We put 4-bolt caps on it. We used CompStar cranking rods, CP pistons, obviously the RaceSaver head, comp cams, valve train with the nitrided camshaft, a low blocker core. There was no expense spared on this. Dan Olson aluminum box pan, Kinsler Dragon Claw injector, MSD mag. There's no expense spared on it. Spent 2 or 3 days on the dyno with the thing, and
but you had $20,000 in it, right?
Yeah, price tag on it was $20,000.
Could you spend any more on it?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well.
The one thing
I don't know what to tell you.
The one thing I want to interject here. Now, Roger, I was just at your shop the other day, and jump in here by all means. But I was at your shop the other day. You have a sprint car. It's no secret. It's out there. You have a sprint car from Tony Bruce. Now, with that being said, explain to me this engine package.
I've got to jump in a minute at the $20,000 here. I'm tore up with it. Here's the deal. If you put a $1,200 crank in it, $1,200 rods and $1,200 pistons, that's $3,600 in crank rods and pistons. If you spend $1,000 preparing the block, that's $4,600. An injector is $26,000, so now we're at...
A Dragon Claw is not $2,600.
No way.
Nobody made you buy a goddamn Dragon Claw. If you want to put it on, do it. That's your business.
Yeah, but I wanted to make more power than a Hillborn.
Well, fine. 2,600 for a Hillborn, 46 or 5 for a Dragonclaw. I got it. But 20 grand is still pretty damn salty. You could put the best parts that they make in this thing for 20 grand. So if you want to do it, I don't have an objection. But please don't tell me it can't be done for less and be a reliable engine. I know better.
I didn't say it couldn't be done for less.
Now, hold on. I do want to inject here. Roger, jump in here, and I want you to break down what you showed me at your shop, with the RaceSaver deal and you knew this was coming because I told you I was going to ask some questions.
Basically, what I did was I went out and bought a complete car with a RaceSaver type motor in it. And I bought a complete car 1 year old for $8 grand. Took the motor apart today, and I mean, this thing's been run, the motor's been run for 7 years under the URSS series, which is real similar rules. And they've done nothing to the motor in any of those years other than put rings and bearings in it once. And I took it apart, and the thing looked brand new. And I know this guy's won some features with it. He wasn't apparently the best driver, but so I think it can be done. He paid $7,250 or something like that, years ago for this motor from a motor builder, and he thinks is as competitive as could be.
Well, here's the thing. We have engine builders that build 20 grand motors. There's no question about it. I would say that if a professional engine builder builds you a 20 grand motor, and he's got a Dragonclaw on it, and he's got the MSD mag, which, by the way, electronics, you have to carry 100 pounds under RaceSaver because it is an electronic piece. The Dragonclaw, MSD mag, 4-volt caps, probably got, $600-700 oil pan on it?
Yeah, $650.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question that if you want to put the best of parts that you can buy in it, you can get to 20 grand. And I have no argument with that. But what I do tell you is that a guy with no money can build something that's what you would consider shit, and
who's going to
be able to keep up with you.
Who's going to win more races?
As long as you can, but he can keep up with you.
Who's going to win more races? The $20,000 engine or the $8,000 engine? Who do you think is going to be more competitive, more consistently?
Absolutely will not win more races.
How do you figure?
The $20,000 motors come through down here all the time. I don't know how many motors we have here in Dallas. Probably 150.
This is Smiley talking right now.
I promise you, the guys that go to Lubbock and buy the $20,000 motors, Dennis Wells had one of those trick $26,000 motors on his dyno last week. On the chassis dyno, it made $393. His over-the-counter basic stock parts motor make about $435. So basically what the guy bought was a $26,000 pipe dream. And the only thing I say, I wish that guy that was selling the motors was working for me.
I do want to ask a question here. Now, down there in Texas, and even over on the East Coast, have you guys had some 360 drivers that have switched over to this RaceSaver engine package? And if you have, what have been their comments and concerns about it?
Well, most of them here are just tickled to death to get to race because I've been involved in sprint car racing. I actually built the car that won the first World of Outlaw show. We were involved before then. I bought my first sprint car in 1965. Been involved with them ever since.
Jesus,
I saw the 410 racing die. I saw the 360 racing on its deathbed. There was no weekly 360 racing as recent as 6 or 7 years ago. The touring guys came through a few times a year. Now we have 5 tracks running RaceSaver cars on a weekly basis, and we have my touring series. So what we went from basically no sprint cars to roughly 150 right here in town. And it's been a while. Don't get me wrong, it didn't happen overnight. It took 8 years. But those guys are tickled to death. There's hardly ever a night goes by that they don't come by and shake my hand and say thanks.
You know, the one thing...
First of all, we're doing something we all love to do, and we're doing it and can still not have to hawk the house.
Now, as far as this is French, as far as the 410 drivers or 360 drivers, if they choose to race RaceSaver, the first thing they have to do is realize that it's recreational racing. They don't think that they're going from a 360 or a 410 because they're going to make people think they're great drivers. They all take it as a pretty big step down, and it may be. After they have done it a while, most of them are pretty happy to be doing it. Now, this is not a destination for somebody that's looking to make a career out of racing and get paid. But this is a destination for people who want to run the race car at a modest amount of money. Now, as far as engine builders telling me I'm dead wrong, this is nothing new. I understand that I'm dead wrong. I understand that the concept of RaceSaver is all wrong as far as the big-time engine builders. But what I can tell you is that I had, and I've worked for some fairly notable people in the business. I've had some of them tell me that there was no money in this motor. My argument is you're probably going to make more money if you have 15 RaceSaver customers than if you have one 360 customer. And that turns out to be the case. Now, these motors are very simple so that when you go for the rebuild, it doesn't worry you to death to do it. It's pretty much just a normal mechanical job. You take it apart, you put rings and bearings in it. It's nothing that's going to worry you, and the motors are not prone to blow up so that you don't have customers hollering at you.
Adam,
but it's not everybody's cup of tea, and we never said it is.
On the phone with us right now in Slingin Dirt is French Grimes and Smiley. Guys, thanks. You're down in Texas helping us out with taking care of this 305 versus 360 debate. Adam, if I'm going to interrupt you a little bit, bud, you haven't had a lot of time to kind of really talk about your concern. Am I gauging your concern correctly that basically you're going to have to go buy all new equipment? Is this one of your main concerns?
No, I'm not going to go buy new equipment. I'm not going to race a 305. That will never happen. That I can assure you.
Let me ask you, if you're
my deal is a 305.
On the phone?
My deal is a 305 sprint car is not a sprint car. If you put a wing on a modified,
fine.
It doesn't make it a sprint car.
360, but don't waste my time and the viewers' time listening to something that doesn't have anything to do with you.
Well, you called
if you're never going to race a 305. Do everybody a favor and get off the phone.
Well, you called 305 sprint car racing recreational racing. If you want to do something recreational, buy a camper and go to the lake. Sprint car racing is supposed to be.
Fight.
What's that?
My take is everybody's recreation is a little different. We got a lot of people that think this is fun. If you don't think it's fun, that's why the world is what it is. This is America, at least until, well, it's kind of the communist state of America right now. But anyhow, if you don't like it, nobody's telling you to do it.
Well, Roger brought something up a couple years ago that he said that with a wing on a sprint car, it makes it a slot car. So now you take 200 horsepower away from it. Now you're going to have 20 slot cars on the track. You're not going to have a sprint car.
But you race a 360 or a 410, is that right?
360, yep.
360. So I'm assuming that you've won quite a few of the 360 shows that are open shows.
Not quite a few, but I've won a couple.
Well, a couple don't make you a stud, does it?
I never said I was a stud. That never came out of my mouth.
Too good to run a 305.
That's not at all what I said.
You said you will never run one, so that's fine.
Because that's not a sprint car to me. Growing up watching sprint cars.
You know what? It is a sprint car to other people, so if it isn't to you, it's a free country. You don't have to run one, but some people like them.
Okay.
And some people have been able. Look, we got some 70-year-old men that have won races that would never have had a chance again. That means something to them. We've got some kids that have won races on their way up, and that meant something to them. The fact that you don't think it's a race car doesn't affect their perception of how much fun it was for them. Now, if it takes them someplace else and they can go beat Steve Kinzer later, by all means, we're proud of them. And I've never told anybody that a RaceSaver car is anything like a 410. A 360 right now is basically just a 410 missing some inches.
Hey, French,
because of the cost of it.
This is Jay again.
But
the thing that Adam's upset about, more or less, is that
410 is a real, honest-to-God race car. It's for sure a race car. You better be a tough guy to run it and be competitive, regardless of the money. If you're going to be competitive at the World of Outlaws with a 410, you are an honest-to-God, for-real super stud race car driver, no question about it. And I can't imagine why that guy would want to get in a RaceSaver car, because he's on top of the world. I would never try to talk him into it. But there are other people that cannot operate at that level. And then they try the 360, and finally they can't for lack of talent or money. They can't operate at the 360 level, but they're not willing to go home and take up whatever other recreation is. They'd like to run a sprint car. That's what this has been useful for. It's no way intended to replace a 360 or a 410. It is recreational racing. We've never built it as anything but.
Hey, French.
And we certainly don't want to encourage anybody who is capable of running a 360 or a 410 at a competitive level to do anything but continue what they're doing. I'm happy for them because I truly believe that a real sprint car, when you call a real sprint car, it's a 410 running at World of Outlaw level. That's what a real sprint car is. However, there ain't many guys that can stand that level anymore, is it?
Hey, French, we're gonna have Jay talk real quick for a minute. Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think what Adam and most of the locals they're not upset. I mean, they're not against the 305 per se as what you're doing. They're upset because basically Roger dismantled or attempted to dismantle the 360 class around here.
How many cars you got at the track?
They're averaging about 18 for the year, about 18 cars for the year. But there's a lot of cars. There's a lot of cars in the area that don't go there just because. Give me a minute here. There's a lot of cars in the area that just don't go there because they don't like to race at his racetrack. They don't like the way he runs the show, or the show is a long show. He starts early and it ends late.
As most racetrack owners are never no good to racers, how many others of you guys have racetracks?
Well, none. I ain't stupid enough to own one.
Well, that's my problem because as I tell all of my guys, we've all got race cars, but we don't have no racetrack. So the first person you need to be nice to, whether you like him or not, is a racetrack owner because he gives you a place to run that damn race car, and you can't run it at the Kmart parking lot.
Yeah, but most of the guys will just go somewhere else and race, and that's what they do. They just don't race at his racetrack.
How far is somewhere else?
Oh, anywhere between 2 and 3 hours.
Well, and
they don't have a problem.
America, it's a free choice.
Well, they're not bitching about that. They don't have a problem doing that. Roger's the one that's bitching about it as far as the car count wise. So he just dismantled the class, and instead of building on, the 18 cars and the fan base that he had for the 360s, he just shut everything down and going to go to RaceSaver because I don't know, he gets a kickback from IMCA.
You want him to devote his time and money building a class that's dying nationally.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree with you that it's not dying. But he's not going to be the one to change it. Emmett's the only one that can change it, and he don't give a shit. So,
well, based on what you just said, I would like you to know that I do give a shit.
Well, I understand.
It may not be what you care about, but it has worked for other people. I understand that you're mad that your class is going away. I don't have a problem that you're mad with it.
Oh, I'm not mad with it. I don't care either way. It's not going to affect my business one way or the other.
But the reality of it is, I didn't call Roger. He called me. We have a product that's worked across the country. We've got 750-some cars in the country, 730-some, I don't know. But anyhow, we think it's a worthwhile alternative. I'm not trying to tell you that it should replace a 360 or a 410. If the 360s are viable at Roger's track or wherever else, by all means, stick with them. I certainly wouldn't ever want to stop a 360 class and RaceSaver, and I don't care about 305s, only RaceSaver. I've never suggested RaceSaver is a good alternative for anybody unless that's what they think they need to do. In many cases, the people that have done this have found it to be a viable alternative. Now, what has happened in the East is we started this 18 years ago in the East. And typically, much as the same as your earlier guest said, it's not a real race car. I've lived with that now for 18 years. What has happened over that 18 years, the confluence of ideas and the economy, the 360 groups, they had a 358. In Pennsylvania, they had a 358 iron-headed motor, which started out as a $3,000 stock part motor. It's become a $32,000, $34,000 motor. Iron heads, $34,000. URC had their larger than 360, and later they went to the ASCS rules. They had a good car count. But what has happened, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, they have lost a large amount of their competitors, usually for economic reasons.
Hey, Smiley, this is
Roger. The fact that they went to RaceSaver cars, because now we have a lot of RaceSaver cars, and the 360 groups are unhappy because they've lost their members. I really need the 360 guys and the 410 guys because we have guys that are on the way up, and they need a place to go. And I certainly see that a 360 car takes more of a driver to drive at whatever level he has than a RaceSaver car, and as does a 410 take more than a 360 guy. As Wolfgang has told me a time or two, his story is you go to the rodeo, and he sees all kinds of people in the rodeo, but he said, how many bull riders are there? And he said, there ain't many. And he said, 410s is a bull, son. When you sling a lady over a 410 to be competitive, you better have a sack on you, and you better be willing to bust your ass. Now, there's a place for everything. I think there's a place for a RaceSaver. If you don't think so, by God, I respect your idea. Run a 360. But I'm not forcing this down anybody's throat. But what I won't do is sit here and listen to we're the evil of the world, because we're not. We're just an alternative.
And, Roger, I don't think you're forcing the 305s down anybody's throat. This isn't something that you just decided in the middle of the season. You know what? Screw the 360s. Can you talk a little bit about why you're switching to the 305s? What brought this on? What is spurring this whole thing?
Well, really, I think it's the economy has killed the 360s to start with, and plus themselves. Basically, the money just keeps getting invested more and more and more into the 360 cost, just like any other racing.
How has the economy affected it when we had 27 cars at the meeting the other night? 30 that were willing to go with the new series.
Well, if you had 30 guys that were committed at that point, they should have probably been committed before then. The handwriting.
Well, they just didn't want.
18 of them at the races.
They just didn't want to race at your racetrack.
Well, that's fine. So if there's only 18
because all those cars are racing, they just ain't racing with you.
So if there's 18 cars racing at my track, I can't put on a good show with 18 cars. So we need to try a different plan.
You told me one time that you needed a B feature to have a good show out there.
I agree.
You need another B feature out there, like a hole in the head.
Roger, let me back in here real quick. This Smiley. There's two things that some of the racers don't seem to realize. Maybe you got to be old like French and I to realize this. There's two things that we're trying to preserve, and sprint car racing is one of them. If we can do it with a more moderate price deal that actually fits the times a little better, we're damn sure going to make a wholehearted effort in that. But I don't know how it is up there, but down here, not any of the racetracks are jumping through hoops, and if we can help them, and that's the sole purpose of my little touring group, is to help the racetracks that are struggling a little bit have a sprint car show at a price they can afford and make some money for a price that we can afford to run for. In other words, if I had a 410 car, I can't run it for what we run for, but my guys can actually get enough money for running dead last to pay them what it costs them to come run the car.
And I agree with you.
I think the problem you're going to see, you're going to have modified guys want to get one of these cars because they can race one of them week to week way cheaper than they can run a modified car.
And I understand with the touring series that it's a better way to go. The weekly sprint car, as far as staying at one racetrack week to week, is a dying deal.
It kind of feels a little void. It's a whole different cup of tea. We started it with that, and ever since we started it and the weekly track started picking them up, we backed our series way down. We're down to where next year we're only going to book 12 races. That's one at each racetrack, and let the weekly guys take advantage of basically what we've built.
And, Roger, is there any of the IMCA modified guys that are looking at getting into this? Because I know what it costs to run an IMCA modified, and IMCA's, they shot themselves in the foot on that deal.
Absolutely. There's all kind of modified guys wanting to get involved because... I meant
at Eagle Raceway.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
That's what I was asking Roger.
We see, and I'll have a guy call me wanting to do a driving skill, and he'll say, well, I don't know what to put my kid in a modified or a sprint car. I said, well, let me make it real simple. You can buy a 5-year-old sprint car, and you'll be just as up to date. It's just as fast as anybody. You buy a brand new modified before you get it to the racetrack, there's probably a better idea.
Smiley French, I want to interject here, and I want to let Jay and Roger discuss this a little bit between them. I think they had a good banner going there, and I want to hear this between these two guys. If you want to sit back.
Yeah, I do believe that there's going to be some mod guys move up, along with maybe even some sport mod guys that have some sprint involvement before, and there's been some interest from some mini sprint guys.
Okay.
Now I don't know if I don't know that I'll have a full field to start with. I mean,
well,
you're struggling
with the A-mod count right now, anyways, too, compared to what it was.
Compared to what it was, but not compared to other tracks.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But yeah,
you can blame IMCA with that for their chip rule because that didn't work.
Yeah, it wasn't the best plan. I don't believe.
No, every 383 just got obsoleted for a 434.
I would agree. That's what I built.
Well, why wouldn't you? We'd have built more cubic inch, but it's just easy to build a 434. After you go bigger than that, it's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah. No, I think this is about the only. Looking at the racetrack deal over the last 7 years, I didn't see any new people getting involved. I mean, there's over 7 years, there's been 2 new guys. Not saying that guys, not even talking about the guys who have quit or moved out or moved on or whatever, but as far as new interest, I really seen 2 guys over 7 years, and I think this will give the opportunity maybe for some other guys to become involved. And everybody keeps accusing me of kicking the 360s out, and I really did not kick the 360s out. They can still race if they want.
That's a hokey ass deal.
If you can get their fuel and if you can get their fuel figured out,
I'm not even going to attempt. But most of them are just upset that they dismantled the. You get in here? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, French Smoke, Smiley, is there any kind of closing statement you guys want to make? I know there's been a lot said tonight, and we really appreciate you joining us on Slingin' Dirt. So we'll give you a couple of minutes. Is there anything closing statements you guys want to make?
Well, I guess here's what the only thing I can tell you is that RaceSaver is a way of racing. I don't care about 305s, but RaceSaver is a regulated rules package that has increased in subscribership every year over 18 years. The last year or so, so far this year, we have sold 100 pairs of heads for RaceSaver this year. So the growth is gaining each year. I don't think it's right for everybody, but if the economic times and economic pressures have pushed a track to where they reconsider, sometimes they look at RaceSaver. If they look at RaceSaver and anybody wants any help, we're here to help them with whatever information that we can give them. RaceSaver, for what it's worth, let me explain to you. There is no fee for a RaceSaver sanction. The track has to agree to list the website for the rules, have a tech inspector, and go by the rules. We don't take money out in sanction fees. We don't have any spec parts with the exception of the heads, so there's no racer bought point fund. This is for racers by what I think are racers, and we hope that some people like it. I certainly understand in Roger's situation right now, he's basically painted a target on himself, and the guys with 360s are pretty mad at him, and I understand from their point of view that they're being disenfranchised because he's doing something they don't like. But they've also, the racers on the phone just told me, people don't race at this track because they don't like Roger. Well, that's called voting with your feet. And as long as they don't mind driving somewhere else, then Roger has to deal with 18 cars instead of 30. But he also has a chance to vote, and he says, I don't think this is enough to do what I want to do for my fans. I'm going to try to do something different. RaceSaver is not the answer for everybody. If it turns out to be something Roger believes in and he can get you guys to believe in it, it may be the answer for you. I don't say that it is. It is not a 360. It is not a 410. But as to the assertion it's not a real sprint car, fine, as long as we call a real sprint car a 410 at World of Outlaw level. And if you're not at that level, then I don't think you ought to be telling me what a real race car is because you ain't driving one. And this is not supposed to be a replacement for serious-ass real race cars. It is recreational racing at a price we hope most people can manage.
Thank you so much.
That's about it.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, guys. French Grimes, Charlie, Smiley Sutton on the phone with us. Charlie and French, thank you so much for taking your time out of your night. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
Hey, guys.
Woo!
You know, one thing I want to say here.
Just
Adam,
one? Just one thing?
Yeah. Adam,
Maybe 2?
maybe 2, maybe 2.5.
Okay.
In your email to Dane and I, you said it best. Describe 360 sprint car racing. This was the greatest thing I've heard.
And I want to apologize to Smiley and French. Obviously they're off the line. They can't hear it now. I didn't mean to really jump down anybody's throat. And by no means have I ever tried to even pass myself off as exceptional to anybody else. I grew up watching sprint cars. It was my passion, still is, will be for the rest of my life. But sprint cars are on the edge of out of control. They're insane to drive, and when you get out of one, everybody that just watched you do something looks at you like you're crazy. That is a sprint car. That is a sprint car driver. That's what we do. Going to something that has 200 horsepower less, in my mind, is going to do nothing but lower the track's overhead, because now they won't have to spend so much money on track prep to maintain their equipment, to pay someone to do it, because now they don't have the extra 200 horsepower taking the moisture out of the track. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I had a phone conversation with Roger not long ago, and he told me that the only way that he could see keeping moisture out of the track, or keeping the moisture in the track, is to slow us down. And his only way, his solution to slowing us down is to going another direction in a motor. That's fine. He owns the track. It's a business. It's his right to do that. But we don't all have to sit back and take it with a smile.
See, the way I took the email coming from you, Adam, was, and maybe Jay, jump in here if you want to jump in here, but being a Sport Mod B Mod driver, I remember back in 2003, 2004, the Sport Mod B Mods came on scene, and everybody said these were not real race cars. They weren't modifieds. They weren't going to be fast. And so I took it, in my perception, I took it as, okay, well, these 360, these RaceSavers are not going to be fast. They're not going to put on a show. They're going to be a whole lot slower. They're 200 horsepower. But then I go out to the Charlie Clark, and I'm seeing Jesse Sabin in a crate motor on a 2-bar, come from dead last and take 4th place in the feature.
But he don't have a 5x5 wing bolted on top of it, and that's the biggest problem. Is that you can be competitive. You can be competitive. You have good racing with a lower horsepower car like a modified, but when you get a 5x5 wing bolted on top of it, the downforce, it just turns it into a slot car track. Knoxville Raceway's turned into a slot car track now with the 360s because they're locked down so hard. I was over there 2 weeks ago, and I was bored out of my mind.
When I was over there last week, and I agree. It's just the guy that you can't win unless you're Clint Garner, who's got a million laps around that place from any further back than the 3rd or 4th row.
If you're going to take a car and knock the horsepower out of it, such as a 305 car, I'm not against the 305s in any way. It doesn't matter to me. I like racing all the same. But you've got to unhook the car somehow. You also got to, the way the rules are wrote, it's also a 35 durometer right rear tire. That's 10 points lower than the ASCS medium tire. That's just ridiculous.
So you're saying with the softer rear in that big wing,
it's got a softer rear tire.
It's going to be harder on the engines all the way around.
It's harder on the engines.
And it's going to keep the cars hooked up.
The cars are hooked up to where there's just going to be a follow leader race.
Now, I think the B mods are great. They are a viable solution as an addition to, as an intermediate class to where the car looks the same. I don't know a lot about modifieds. My dad used to own one, but I was a kid when I was younger when that deal happened. But you got the bones to go to an A mod. You need to change the rear suspension and motor. Is that about it?
Rear suspension, motor, and then on the Sport Mod, you're allowed that 5-inch spoiler to tighten the car up going into the corner.
Sure.
Which is what won the Charlie Clark Memorial, by the way.
Yeah.
So I believe, and I think, again, I think the B mods are great. I'm not against the 305s. I'm against them being the replacement, because they're not a replacement. They are an addition to, which is why they're at Knoxville. They're not a replacement. They're an addition to. They're an intermediate class to get you involved, to get you started, and then you move and grow.
The 305 at Knoxville is it's ridiculous to watch that.
Roger, you have anything that you want to add here?
Well, anytime I've ever gone to Knoxville, the race is ridiculous, but it's a huge track.
I'm going to disagree with that. I'm not a big track. I'm not a big track fan either.
I think you get. I'd agree. I mean, I think what we're going to see, if we get any cars, because Jay don't think we're going to get but a couple cars, but if we get a couple cars out there, I think they're going to be passing their ass off, because they're going to be on the same straightaway instead of like my 360 show last week where there was 4 guys in the same lap and everybody else was a turd out there.
And I kind of feel for you a little bit, Roger, because and it's not just you, it's anybody in the track promoter. You've got a very thankless job, and it's something that Bud has impressed in me.
Oh, yeah, he's a prick no matter what he does.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that's not an insult being slung at you. You're going to piss somebody off no matter what you do, and I think you're in a lose-lose situation. You're just trying to make the best of it. So only time will tell if the 305s is a good decision.
You do have a good show out there. I mean, you obviously you're successful at it because you got a lot of cars. You got people in the stands. I consider it somewhat of a 3-ring circus, but it's money-wise, I think you're doing a successful job. Probably.
I think the Eagle is set up to be a fantastic track for sprints just because of the high banks. Am I wrong?
I wasn't around when it was originally built, but I think that's kind of the reason the track was built, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you guys would know.
Yeah, I wasn't around then either, but yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, one of them
and
was
the banking
talking.
has gone down in the last few years.
Oh yeah, and one of them, I don't know if it was French or Smiley, was talking about a motor they built, or he built a car on the first World Outlaw race in the '60s. I wasn't even alive then, so I don't know what the relevance was, but
I think it was because he was telling me one day it was because the car won at Eagle.
Huh.
With that being said, have you seen a lot of new interest in other classes, other drivers? I mean, now that we're 3-4 weeks into this new, I guess, new class, new engine package coming out, have you had some increased interest?
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of calls, but lip service is lip service. Until they actually open the gate.
I had a lot of calls about it too, but not a single one of them is going to do anything with it.
Yeah, until we open the gate and prove that it is racing, it's all just talk.
So I guess my question is, Roger, what's going to happen if this isn't successful like you're hoping? Then what?
I will get rid of the racetrack. You can buy it, and then you can make it a whole.
I can assure you, just as much as I won't be at a 305, I will not be purchasing a racetrack
for Roger.
Because I do firmly believe that Eagle Raceway needs sprint cars there, and I've said that since the beginning. There will be sprint cars there no matter what. Everybody, the guys who actually know me, I'm a late model guy. That's what I've always raced. But
when are you going to have late models there weekly?
Never, because we're a sprint car track. So we're going to have sprint cars forever. If it kills me, we're going to have sprint cars. Otherwise, somebody else is going to need to own the place, because I'm not going to be the death of the whole sprint car deal.
Right. Well, my question, though, is if the 305 doesn't work, what are you going to go to then? Are you going to go to
four cylinders, pony motors?
We're going to keep working on
put wings on tuners.
We're going to keep working on the RaceSaver car.
So you're not having 360s.
How long are you giving it till it dies?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I will guarantee the purse for 2 years, and if I can't get enough cars to fill a field, I'll put 20 cars out there of my own.
But you told me you needed to have a B feature.
Okay, I'll put 22 cars out there of my own.
That's not always a B feature either, because we've been at Eagle with 22, 23, 24 cars, and we've all.
A few weeks ago when I was at Knoxville, they had 18 305 cars. Quick time was a 17.9. The 16th place was a 25.9, which was just excruciating to watch. 6 cars finished the feature. There wasn't one wreck. They're just shit boxes.
Again,
well,
huge track, though.
You can have that same racing with any style of car.
I agree.
I mean, we went to the Silver Dollar Nationals a couple of weeks ago, and that is the late models. That's some of the best out there. Yeah. And there wasn't one collision.
Yeah.
Not one wreck. There was one spin out, and it was all about the drivers just knowing how to take care of their stuff. And there was cars that within 6 laps were going a lap down.
My point of that conversation was that most of the cars that are out there are built out of shit, so they can't finish. Or they just don't have a maintenance program, don't know how to, or don't know, they're new to it, so they don't know how to have the knowledge to maintain a sprint car. A sprint car is a pretty maintenance-intensive piece of crap.
Absolutely.
I think almost any race car, really, if you take care of it, is like that.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely a conversation that could go on for hours and hours in an argument that I don't think anybody wants to let go. But we are out of time. We're 50 minutes into it, and I think French and Smiley took up about 30 of it with their conversation. But
really, I was thinking like 45.
we really appreciate you guys coming in. Adam, thank you for emailing us and voicing your opinion. And I apologize. I've already forgotten Jay.
I wouldn't have known who you were when you walked in. I mean, you look like the cousin of Jonathan Hillstream.
Yeah, guys, thanks for coming in and taking the time and talking with us. We greatly appreciate your candor and voicing your opinion. And can't wait to see you guys out on the track wherever it be next season.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks. Appreciate
Roger, as always, thanks for coming in, buddy.
Told you that was going to be a slobber knocker. It was going to be intense.
I kind of feel like I got beat up a little bit there.
All you just stood in the corner and quivered.
I quivered. I did. A little bit. But, it's something that we're going to have to kind of broach again at the end of the year, and maybe time will kind of put in a little bit more insight into this. But
the only thing I could, in my personal opinion is, let's give it time. Let's see where it goes. I understand both sides of the issue. Adam is absolutely right. You go out there and you see Adam or Mike Bostner jacked over, and it is.
It's a hell of a show.
It's a hell of a show, and they're drag racing around a circle, and it's either on or off the gas. There's no in between middle there, but at the same time, if you're only seeing 2 or 3 drivers over the a number of years, and you start seeing drivers drop off for whatever reason, you're going to have to do something. But like I said, I remember in the sport mods, like I said earlier, sport mods, they're going to be boring. They're going to be worthless. They're going to be all this. They're going to be all that. And it's not going to be worth the show. And now, look at the car counts, and a lot of times they're faster than the A mods.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we're learning both in the NASCAR and in the dirt track world is that the economy is really pinching our sport a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the most expensive sport to be a part of, hands down. And when people don't have as much money to pour into their love and their recreation and their Friday night racing and Saturday night racing, alternatives are necessary. And I think this is just what Roger's trying to offer, and we'll see with time what's going on. So, Thank you so much for joining us for Slingin' Dirt. We'll be back next week where we're going to talk. Are we going to break down Nebraska track points next week?
Yeah, we'll shoot the shit and do some Nebraska racing.
All right, this has been Slingin' Dirt, brought to you by Lost Dog Design. Raina and Dave will take care of all of your social media networking, website design, graphic arts. Get it all at lostdogdesign.com. Let Raina and Dave take care of all of your social media, all of your website, and all of your graphic arts design. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.